It's the end of an era. College sports as we've known them are probably over.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. Happy Saturday, happy weekend, happy summer. Appreciate you being here. I'm your host, Ryan Herring, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you being an everydayer and making this one of your first listens. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet hits. Yeah, college football, Division I college sports, not college football, sorry, Division I sports are changed forever. And the House settlement hit. We're going to talk about why that's good for Wisconsin, but why the landscape has irrecoverably changed. Still some dubious things I'm not sure going to work out quite perfectly. What's next? How this is going to play out? How do you budget between the different sports? We have a bunch to talk about, and we're still scratching the surface here. More is going to come out. I am not an expert on this, but I can give you what I know, what I've read, what I've seen, my initial reactions. Why I think it's good for Wisconsin, but again, why I still think there's some pretty significant challenges and questions that are coming here. Let's start here. It's happened. It happened. Colleges are going to pay players. We've talked about this for a long time. We've known it's probably coming, but it's no longer theory. Starting July 1st, colleges are going to be able to pay Division I athletes. Wow. What a time we live in, right? We live in a time with relevant Indiana football, colleges paying players. Like, whoever thought either of those things would happen? And yet here we are. All right, so let's start at the beginning. Why I think this is good for Wisconsin. Why I actually think that Wisconsin is one of the schools that benefit from this and why other schools may not. Wisconsin is and has been one of the more solvent athletic programs anywhere. Wisconsin is incredibly profitable. They are fiscally responsible, and they are well positioned to absorb this hit because now there's going to be a $20 million hit essentially to the major programs. You're going to have to pay up. You're going to be able to pay up to $20 million. So obviously the schools that want to compete are going to pay up to that level. There are schools that operate in the red. A lot of schools operate in the red, some significantly so. Some really powerful schools operate in the red. I was just reading about Alabama's budget. You know, they operate at a annual $20 or $30 million loss. Wisconsin doesn't do that. Wisconsin operates in the black, and they're well positioned as a university to roll with this. They have been looking forward to it, planning for it, having talked to a couple people close to the program, in and around the program. This is a big deal for Wisconsin. The athletic department is excited for it. They think it's going to help level the playing field. And again, Wisconsin, because of where they're at financially, because of their resources, and because of how they've operated, they're well positioned to take advantage of this. Other schools are going to have a little bit more difficulty just because now that money has to come from the university. It's not coming from mega donors and these massive collectives. Now, we're going to get to that part of it too. Those things aren't gone. Those things are not gone. We're going to get to that too. But this is a spot where Wisconsin is well suited. Let's talk about the basics. So $2.8 billion settlement that is going to be paid out over the course of, I believe it's 10 years. Essentially, that is, I believe it's 10 years, right? Yep, for the next 10 years. So the NCAA is going to basically back pay $2.8 billion for athletes that competed at the Division I level from 2016 to now. So that is going to cover those athletes. Again, like a couple quick questions with this, and I had no idea. What if you graduated in 2015? You just got to be like, oh, come on, man. Like, what the heck? Is that going to lead to more lawsuits? Maybe, right? How do you distribute the $2.8 billion for the last 4 or 5 years? These are questions I don't have a good answer to, right? Like, how do you possibly figure out which athletes in the last, 6, 7, 8 years get this percentage with this school and this sport? But the NCAA is going to be back paying since 2016. Going forward, universities will be given it's $20.5 million per school. Major universities, $20.5 million per school to directly pay players. Those payments start July 1st. So that is kind of one of the next immediate actions. How you're going to divvy that up is going to be another big question. One thing we've seen a lot of is schools are going to divvy up 75 to 85% of that revenue to football, another 5 to 10% to men's basketball. Women's basketball will get a chunk, and then the other schools will just have to kind of fit in as they fit in. That's a very broad description of what I've heard. I think every school is going to be slightly different, but you can assume that football is going to, at Big Ten university, Big Ten programs, SEC programs, ACC programs, Notre Dame, certainly the football program is going to chew up the big bulk of that. And again, it's a start. It's a start. It's not the finished product. I don't think it can be the final product, but it's a start. And it's incredibly interesting. I would love to be a fly on the wall to see how that money is divvied up, where it's divvied up to, where it goes. Apologies, let me mute my phone for a second there. Yeah, a couple other things here. This settlement, Judge Claudia Wilkin approved the deal. It ends a couple of current antitrust lawsuits, 3 of them. It'll end those. Another one, football rosters are going to shrink to 105 players. I really don't think that's a huge impact. I don't see a major impact there. And then again, coming up, there's still further questions about NIL, about those extra payments. Like if you spend $20.5 million and then you have donors that want to continue spending, you want another quarterback, you want another key player. Where does that money come from? Well, you can still go above that through collectives, through donor, or through business partnerships with players. But then you get back into that gray area, which I'm going to talk about in the next segment. But how do you determine what is a legitimate business partnership, a legitimate payment, what is fair, what is a fair market value? That'll be next segment. That's where we're going to get into some of the gray area where I think this is going to be really tricky and difficult to enforce going forward. Let's check the comments because this is a big day. Family Man Ty says, anything to level the playing field is good. Don't want to become a small market university like our Wisconsin-based professional teams. Family Man P says, Nigel wants his bag. Yeah, Nigel was ahead of the game on this. If you remember, Nigel Hayes talked about, athletic revenue sharing, player share well before some of this stuff was happening. He was ahead of his place on this. And again, he's right in front of that cutoff. The NCAA is going to back pay back to 2016. When did Nigel Hayes graduate Wisconsin? Was it 16? He might be in this. Someone help me out here. When did Nigel graduate? Like Nigel could actually somehow be in this if my math is mathing. Greg Linscomb says, how does this affect someone like Marquette that doesn't have football? Probably be able to pay a lot more for basketball, would I assume. Now, I don't think every school gets 20.5 either. I think there's only certain schools that are going to get to 20.5. I think a school like Marquette gets less. I'm going to dive way deeper into this, I promise. I'm going to get people on here that are involved in this, and we're going to continue diving, but I don't think Marquette is going to get the same share as Wisconsin to pay their players. All right, let's pause here and talk a little bit about just the seismic change of this. And I want to almost start with, I'm a big proponent of let's make things better. We don't need to get it perfect, but let's move the football down the field. Let's get it in range, right? If in Navy, sometimes you have to fire ranging shots to figure out in World War II, you have to fire a couple shots to figure out the range of the enemy. I think this is getting us in the ballpark. It's getting it started. It's a foundation that we can build from. It's something. And next, family man tie contracts. Next is maybe, I think the government probably there needs to be some type of antitrust. There has to be. Otherwise, nothing's going to stop the next player from suing and saying, I still should be able to make more. I should still be able to change whenever I want. I still should be able to stay in college for 7 years. So there's more coming, but this is a good step. It's a start. It's a push in the right direction. It's something that can take care of some of the absolute nonsense of a donor just coming in and saying, I'm going to give you a $10 million check to come to this university. Hello, Oregon, and those type of schools. It's going to be a lot harder to do that type of thing going forward because now you're going to have to prove if I am donating, if I am providing some extra financial compensation to a D1 recruit, there has to be an actual benefit that I'm getting back. Like he has to be providing an actual benefit, a service. There's going to be an NCAA NIL clearinghouse that's going to have to vet these. So it's not going to stop everything because people are people, because this is high stakes stuff, because there's a lot of money and ego involved. People are still going to circumvent this. They're still going to find ways around it, but it's harder. There's more structure in place. And making progress is always better than just being stuck in the muds, being stuck in the swamp of sadness, like our True and, the never-ending story, the horse. Like, you just got to move. You got to keep going. So I think this is a good step. It's progress. It can't be the be-all, end-all. I want to talk about the collectives, kind of the NIL portion next, how that process looks, and where I think it's going to still be very challenging. But again, I think this is good for Wisconsin. I've talked to people who really think this is good for Wisconsin. And I believe it is. I believe it helps level the playing field, and Wisconsin is in a great spot to take advantage just because of the way they position themselves. All right, let's take a quick break for our friends of the show. Quick second to say thank you for everybody tuning in to Locked On Badgers on this historic day. Today's episode brought to you by our incredible friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the #1 sports book that we pay attention to in the Locked On Network, the official sports book of the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are going on. I had the Pacers game 1. I was really confident. I was talking to my buddy Jason, who's a big hoop head, and I was like, I think the Pacers are going to get them. I know the Thunder are a big favorite. I feel good about it. So I did great game 1 over on FanDuel. FanDuel has live in-game betting, parlays, futures, teasers, spreads. It's all over there. Plus, it's a user interface that is built like a dream. It handles like a yacht. It is fast, simple to use, easy to get your bets in, every option you could possibly want. And when they owe you money, when you're supposed to get paid out, you get the money fast, easy, efficiently, and effectively into your bank account. It's the best. It's the reason we use it. It's the reason we endorse it. Head over to FanDuel right now. FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. New users get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. That's FanDuel.com. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Okay, let's keep going here. Guys, if you have any comments, questions, thoughts, please throw them in the chat. I'm super interested in this. I'm not an expert on it. I've read and reacted to some stuff, but let's continue talking here. So let's talk about the next part of this. We had a lot of people talk about, well, does that mean the collectives are gone and NIL's gone? No, it actually doesn't at all. So you can still go above that 20 million. We'll call it a salary cap. I don't really know if I love the term salary cap, revenue share, but schools can still go above that because athletes can still profit off their name, image, and likeness. They can still participate in, let's say, a book signing deal or sponsoring a coffee shop or a Lexus, whatever it is. They can still profit off of those. But now all those NIL deals have to go to a clearinghouse. So all those NIL deals are going to go to a clearinghouse. And that clearinghouse, any NIL deal over $600, by the way, is the benchmark here. Those go to a clearinghouse, and the clearinghouse is going to do due diligence to determine if this is fair market value and if this is an appropriate sponsorship. Okay. So that, again, it's better. It's better than what we had. You can no longer just throw $5 million to an athlete, $1 million to an athlete, and say, come sign an autograph, and this is how we're going to get you on campus. That's not going to get through the clearinghouse. Where it's going to get gray is what if the university and the athlete and a business, a local business, let's say it's a car dealership, says, we think this guy's worth $500,000 for him coming down to the dealership, doing a couple commercials, and the clearinghouse says, no, that's crazy. He's not worth $500,000. I think the athlete's just going to sue. I don't know how the clearinghouse is going to determine fair market value. And ultimately, without an antitrust, I don't know how they're going to limit the compensation, because the market determines what a player is worth, right? And if the market says we're going to give you $500,000 to come do a sponsorship or an endorsement, I just don't know how that's going to hold up. I don't know. I'm fascinated by it. And maybe, again, I need to get smarter on this. I am far from a subject matter expert on it, but that part of it feels to me like money is still going to get around the loopholes, right? It's going to go back to Bagman almost, because the money's not going to stop flowing, right? There were illegal payouts before this stuff. There's been under the table dealings during the NIL era, and I don't think it's going to suddenly stop with the clearinghouse. Again, do I think that is? I think that's expected, and I don't think you stop making progress just because this isn't a perfect solution. I think this is a step in the right direction, and I think you still need to have probably antitrust, some type of antitrust exception for college sports coming through. I think you need contracts. I think you need a few more things to happen, but this is a step in the right direction, in my opinion. Let's see what we got with comments in here too. Greg Linscomb says, will there eventually be an NIL cap for major universities? I don't think so. Only because there's not really think of how hard it is to cap what somebody can make off to the side. Like how hard you can't cap what Tom Brady can make with his endorsements, for example. So I don't think there'll be an NIL cap, because I just don't think you're legally, and honestly, I don't think you want to try to set a cap on what someone can make off their name, image, and likeness. I like the idea of players being able to profit off that. That's just me. people can absolutely disagree with that, but no, I don't know if I see that because I just don't know how you would enforce that or determine that. Matthew Anderson says Hayes was 2017. He good. Yeah, Hayes could get in on this, which I think is great. I love it. Let's see. Matthew Anderson also said they already have some contracts ready to go. Let's see if there's anything else here. Mark says there will be immediate lawsuits over the NIL part of it by the Blue Bloods who don't want the oversight limit and will probably win. Yeah, I think this is not the end of lawsuits. I would be stunned. I was talking to Brian Smith, who, if you listen to this show, he comes on here often. He has a lot of insight into this. And he immediately said, listen, this is not the end of lawsuits. And I don't think so either. I think this ends the 3 current antitrust lawsuits. It obviously does that. And I think it gives you some structure. And I do think it's going to limit some of the absolute nonsense deals that have happened out in the open. We're going to give this guy kind of whatever he wants just to do an obligatory autograph session, and then he comes to campus. I think those will go out the window. But you're still going to have players that say, I can make this amount of money by going to do these things. Who are you to say I can't do that? Who is this clearinghouse to say my market value is here when I'm clearly getting offered this? And I imagine a lot of people would side with the athlete in that case because it makes sense to me. So I think that's going to be the really tricky part here. I don't know what that answer is. Pavel says, how is this good for Wisconsin? How will they take advantage of this? It's good for Wisconsin because, so in the first segment, there's 2 things here, I think. And I've talked to a couple people that are close to this that have talked about this. Wisconsin is pretty solvent, especially compared to a lot of major athletic departments and programs. There's a lot of places that operate in the red, a lot of major athletic programs operate in the red. Wisconsin doesn't. So now there's going to be a new $20 million line item that appears on college budget lines, athletic department, budgets. And that's something they haven't been paying. And a lot of schools are going to have to do some resource allocation. They're going to struggle to maybe hit that. Wisconsin's in a good spot to pay that right off the jump. They're in a much better spot than the vast majority of the college landscape. So in that sense, they're well positioned to do this. The other spot where this could really help Wisconsin is it's not that Wisconsin doesn't have great donors or wealthy alumni. They do, but other schools, they don't have a mega donor, right? They don't have guys. The SEC, man, I'm telling you right now, I live down there. I lived in Georgia for 5 or 6, 7 years. I've talked to, there's guys down there that they would give up their health care to donate a couple bucks to the Florida Gators, for example. I'm not saying anything, whether that's good, bad, indifferent. I'm not saying Wisconsin fans are lesser fans because of it. I'm just telling you it's different. It's different. And now you're able to more lean on the financial resources of the university and less on needing people to put all their money into it. And I think that's good for Wisconsin. I think it's good for places like Iowa. I think it's good for places that maybe don't have those mega donors or the guys who are just going to push their chips in all the time every year and not worry about ROI. I don't know how else to say that. I think on both those fronts, it's good for Wisconsin. Okay, let's keep going here. A bunch more comments. Badger Maniac says, very interesting. I think it would hurt smaller schools more. Yeah, dude, I think it's going to really hurt some small schools. Well, you imagine being a small, a Bowling Green. I'm not picking on Bowling Green. I literally know nothing about their financial statement, but a school like that is now being asked to foot the bill for, this type of financial commitment. I think you're going to see schools drop sports. I really think you're going to see the non-revenue sports at a lot of schools and at some big schools. I think you're going to see those shut down, and that's going to be the impact here. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think that's just a real thing. I think universities and athletic directors and programs are going to look at the cash cows. They're going to look at football, men's basketball, at some places, a few other sports, women's basketball, hockey, baseball at some sports, and they're going to shy away from spending money on rowing, gymnastics, track and field. Those are great sports. It's nothing against it. I think you're going to see a contraction of sports at a lot of universities long term. All right, let's keep going here. A couple more comments. So it's going to be like MLB, Family Man Tie. Matthew Anderson says not all schools can even come up with the money to maximize the rev share. Iowa State's AD already said that Wisconsin doesn't have that problem. Exactly. That Matthew Anderson nails it here. Wisconsin is not going to have an issue coming up with this rev share money. Other universities are. Now, what I think other universities are going to do is they'll come up with the rev share, but I think it's going to be at the expense of other sports, other Division I athletes, other things that they do. That's going to be the fallout here. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I think the fallout is a lot of Division I athletes are going to lose their ability to play Division I sports because we're going to pay the money guys. We're going to pay the money sports. And that's life, right? You know, in professional sports, football, NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA players get paid. You know, bowling, professional bowlers don't get that type of change or coin. You know, it is what it is. And I think we're going to go into that realm and that era with Division I sports here. All right, we're going to take one more quick second. Come back with what's next. Like, what is the quick timeline of what's coming up next? What happens next? That's coming up on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show. And a quick second, as always, say thank you for tuning in to Locked On Badgers. A bunch more to follow on this topic for sure. All right. Appreciate everybody in the chat. And by the way, like I'm in my 40s, right? So I've been a college football fan for 3 decades, college basketball fan for 3 decades. This is just, we knew this was coming. This is kind of a monumental shift. We knew this was happening, but it is just still interesting for me to take a step back and realize, like, colleges are going to be paying these players. You know, you go back to Wisconsin and you remember Wisconsin getting hammered because a few student athletes got shoe deals, right? They at a local shoe store, they got some deals, they got some stuff off, and they got hammered. And you fast forward to now, and I mean, we're going to put 15, 60 million from the university into that football program. It's just wild with where we're at. And I think, listen, I've long said, I think athletes, Pete said Shoegate. I've long said, I think athletes should get paid. I'm 100% on board with that. And I like that this is progress. I do like that we've pushed in the right direction. I do like that we've moved the needle. I don't think this is perfect. I don't think we're done wrestling with the best ways to implement this. I think there's going to be fallout here that people are going to get really frustrated and angered about. I think there's fallout that is going to end, you know, some Division I programs and a lot of athletes. But this is what people wanted. And you can't just have the good with it. There's going to be good and bad with this. And I think, you know, we are moving in the right direction. At least we are moving in a direction away from the wild, wild west. We are going to remove some of the craziness with this. The NIL deals are going to have to go through a clearinghouse, which my big thing with that is I think they're going to structure things in a way that will get it through the NIL clearinghouse, but you're going to get rid of the complete nonsense because they're not going to send the complete nonsense there. So maybe 20, 30% of it, you're going to clear out, and that's a progress. Again, let's make progress. Let's get better. All right, let's go. What's next? So June 11th, the NIL portal go launches. Every deal signed now, what I read is every deal signed now is going to be applicable or going to be fall under this umbrella. So going forward, everything is going to have to go through this NIL Go clearinghouse. The portal launches on the 11th. June 15th is the opt-in deal deadline for schools. So if you want to participate in this rev share, June 15th is that opt-in deal. And July 1st is when schools can start paying. So again, you're going to have a 105-man roster limit on football. You're going to be able to spend 20 million total, probably 15 to 16 million of that on the football program. What does it do for Wisconsin? I think it gives Wisconsin, this is something Justin has said, the ability to retain talent. You know, if you wanted to keep, I saw Xavier Lucas come up somewhere here. You know, Family Man Ty says, pass something that doesn't allow teams to get screwed by the Xavier Lucases of the world. I think this would have let Wisconsin keep some of those guys. Like if you, and I don't want to specifically talk Lucas on this, but let's say you go to Texas and you land a high 3-star quarterback, right? A really talented kid. He comes to campus, he blows up. Now you have the ability as Wisconsin to probably, and this is something Justin Jolka, who's been on the show, has talked about, to probably match an offer to a really high profile player if you need to. It probably helps schools like Wisconsin, if they're in that financial position, to match some of those offers and to retain talent. I think that's another spot where it probably helps level the playing field. Family Man Ty, can we add our baseball team back? My guy, dude, I would love a Wisconsin Badgers baseball team, man. I would love it. But you're not going to do it now, right? Not when you're going to spend 75 to 80% of your budget on football. You probably want to spend 10%-ish on men's basketball. It gives you 10% left, you know, and then Wisconsin, listen, what is Wisconsin? Wisconsin still has women's volleyball that a lot of schools don't care about, women's hockey that a lot of schools don't care about, men's hockey that a lot of schools don't care about or don't have. women's basketball that we want to get better, and they've made an investment into that. Wisconsin's in it. We just talked about how it helps Wisconsin. I'll tell you this: Wisconsin is in a bit of a rough spot because there's a lot of good programs. You go look at some other SEC schools. You look at even some other Big Ten schools that maybe don't care about the volleyball program or the hockey programs or the basketball programs or vice versa, the football program, and it's going to be easier for those places probably to pour all their money into a couple, or Wisconsin's going to have to be smart about this. They're going to have to spread it out a little bit. Now, football's still going to get the lion's share as it should, but it's going to be interesting. Yeah, Matthew, baseball ain't happening for now for sure. I know, dude. It's a bummer. And Family Man Ty nails it. It's criminal. It is, man. To be the only Big Ten school without baseball, America's pastime. And there's a lot of talent that comes out of Wisconsin. There's a lot of baseball talent that comes out of Wisconsin, but yeah, it's not happening, man. I'll tell you this. Let me rephrase this question too. Let's say I could tell you can have $1 million every year for a baseball program, and I don't actually have any idea how much baseball would cost. Or I could tell you could take that $1 million and go buy a quarterback every year. What would the majority of Badger fans say? See, that's the rub, right? I think a lot of them would just say, just go get the quarterback. So I love baseball. It bums me out we don't have one, but fiscally, I just don't see it happening. Anyway, that is the show for today. Really do appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you guys so much as always. On Wisconsin, yeah, Matthew Anderson says, give me that QB. I think that's what most people are going to say. Most people are going to say, you don't have a Scrooge McDuck piggy bank, right? It's where do you want to spend the resources? Most would say I'd just rather put it in football. That's my opinion, but I think it's probably true. P says, great show. Man, thanks, P. P's a good dude. So many good people in the chat, man. Family Man's High. We got Greg, good friend who I've met. Matt Anderson's a great dude. He's in the Discord. Pavel's on shows all the time. Good dude. Badger Maniac's been on the last several that I've talked to. So again, really do appreciate Herb's here. He's a good dude, man. This community is phenomenal as always. On Wisconsin, a bunch more content coming up on Monday. We got Coach Gauthier coming on. We do a deep dive into Austin Rapp to finish up our transfer portal deep dive series. On Tuesday, we have a new guest to the show. We're doing our post-spring offensive line talk. Is Riley Molman ready to anchor this line? And which offensive lineman is most likely to pancake somebody into the sideline? We're talking about that on Tuesday. I think I have a coach coming up to talk about Travion Fenderson on Wednesday or Thursday this week. Hopefully someone that coaches them and works with them, talk about that really athletic Badgers basketball commit coming up. We got Nick Osen coming on Tuesday to recap the first 2 weeks of official visits and Amari Latimer. Man, there's a bunch of content coming up, in other words, plus hopefully still a surprise guest that I think you guys would be thrilled to hear from. On Wisconsin, really do appreciate you guys, and we will definitely talk later.